are completely exhausted because you're trying to play God. You optimize your life, track your metrics, and map out your future, yet you're drowning in anxiety. Let's look at the cold data. Your DNA, your brain, and your success were coded by a higher power. You are not the architect of this matrix. You're just a temporary tenant. If you're ready to drop the ego and find out how the system actually works, listen closely. Part 1. We live in a culture that is completely addicted to the illusion of control. You track your steps, optimize your investments, map out your career years in advance, and check your phone every 3 minutes just to make sure you aren't missing anything. You think you are the executive director of your life, but deep down, you are completely stressed out, anxious, and exhausted. If you're ready to look at a logical, down-to-earth proof of why a higher power runs this matrix, and why letting go of your ego is the only way to save your sanity, listen closely. This is not about religion, church, or old books. This is about pure engineering and common sense. Let's talk about the cold reality of the universe and how the system actually works. The blueprint of the universe. The ultimate arrogance of a modern human is to look at a highly complex, perfectly calibrated machine and believe it assembled itself by accident. Imagine you are walking through the woods and you find a brand new smartphone sitting on a rock. The screen is flawless, the software is running at maximum efficiency, and the internal microchips are perfectly configured. Would you ever say, "Wow, a storm hit these trees, blew some dirt together, and accidentally created this tech over millions of years"? Of course not. You know that software requires a programmer, and engineering requires an architect. Now look at your own body. Your DNA is a digital code far more advanced than any software ever written in Silicon Valley. Your heart beats 100,000 times a day without you ever reminding it to. The distance between the Earth and the Sun is tuned down to a microscopic percentage. If we were a few miles closer, we would burn to dust. A few miles further, we would freeze. The universe is not a chaotic accident. It is a masterpiece of precision engineering, signed by a supreme intelligence. The illusion of self-made. You didn't build your brain. You didn't choose your blueprint, yet you brag about your success as if you wrote the code. We love the story of the self-made guy who built an empire from nothing. It is a massive ego trap. Let's look at the data cold and clear. You did not choose the year you were born. You did not choose your country, your parents, or the baseline intelligence in your DNA. You did not design the structure of your prefrontal cortex or the density of your dopamine receptors. If you are smart, driven, or resilient, that is not your achievement. It is a genetic lottery ticket given to you by the Creator. The doors that opened for you, the timing of your big breaks, and the health that keeps you moving were all greenlit by a higher power. When you stand up and scream, "I did this all myself," you look like a child claiming he built a house because he painted the front door. Sit down. You are the instrument, not the architect. The exhaustion of ego. Trying to control a chaotic universe with your tiny human mind is a fast track to a biological burnout. Why is the modern population drowning in anxiety, depression, and insomnia? Because we have taken on a job we were never engineered to handle. We try to control the stock market, the opinions of our peers, the global economy, and the future of our kids. Your brain is a beautiful tool, but it does not have the processing power to calculate 1 billion variables at once. When you refuse to acknowledge a higher power, you are forced to carry the weight of the entire world on your own fragile shoulders. You become hyper-reactive, constantly scanning for threats, terrified of making a wrong move. You are fighting the tide of a massive ocean using a wooden spoon. It is a biological design flaw to live without trust in the system, the license to try. Your free will is real, but it is merely a license to execute a move, not a guarantee over the result. The Matrix allows you to choose your actions, but it completely denies you the power to choose the consequences. You can study for months and still fail the exam because the grading rubric changed. You can eat perfectly, exercise every day, and still get hit by a truck tomorrow. Free will is just your permission to show up and try. Once you accept this, a massive weight lifts from your chest. You stop panicking about the outcome because you realize the outcome was never in your jurisdiction anyway. You do your best, you set your boundaries, and then you step back and let the architect handle the ledger. That is not weakness, that is ultimate tactical efficiency. As the old proverb goes, a man can map out his journey, but the steps are directed by the master of the house. Stop trying to override the blueprint. Part 2. Trust is not a sentiment, it is a strategic calculation. The moment you stop fighting the flow of the universe, you step into absolute clarity. Welcome back to the real mechanics of human life. Believing in a higher power is not a soft escape for people who can't handle reality. It is the ultimate survival strategy for those who want to win the game with their eyes wide open. When you strip away the social programming and look at the cosmos with raw logic, you realize that alignment with the Creator is the only thing that works. Let us proceed into the final principles of how to operate when you understand who actually owns the Matrix. The sovereign surrender. The smartest chess move you can make is to hand the board over to the person who invented the game. When you trust God, you aren't quitting. You are outsourcing the impossible. You look at a crisis, a lost job, a broken relationship, a sudden shift in your health, and instead of panicking, your low cortisol allows you to observe the situation with clinical detachment. You say, "This door closed because the architect is rewriting the script." You stop treating every setback as a fatal tragedy and start looking at it as a divine edit. Sometimes the system destroys your current comfort zone just to prevent you from settling in a trap. When you surrender your demand for a specific outcome, you become unshakable. You can't be broken by bad news because you know that even the storm is part of the engineering plan. The humility of the winner. If you won the cosmic jackpot, keep your mouth shut and protect your posture with silence. When you understand that God gave you your edge, your entire attitude toward other people changes. You stop looking at those who are struggling with contempt or judgment. You don't say, "They just didn't work as hard as me." You realize they simply drew a tougher hand of cards from the heavens. This realization kills your arrogance and replaces it with a cold, protective gratitude. You don't flash your wins to trigger the envy of the broken. You keep your head down, you maintain your discipline, and you use the resources you were granted to build stability for your perimeter. True power is silent, and true wisdom is always grateful. The antidote to FOMO. The screen tells you that you are missing out, but the sovereign mind knows that what belongs to you cannot be stolen by a stranger. Modern life is a non-stop loop of comparison. You look at digital filters and curated lives, and your amygdala screams that you are falling behind. But when you trust the design of the Creator, the illusion of FOMO dies instantly. You understand that your path is specifically engineered for your unique DNA and your specific development. If an opportunity passed you by, it wasn't yours to begin with. If someone else got the promotion or the asset, their brain chemistry was configured for that specific trade. You close the curtains to the theater of strangers. You focus completely on the territory God gave you to govern today, knowing that the ledger of the universe balances itself with perfect mathematical precision. The true purpose of potential. Your talent is not a toy for your vanity. It is a loan from the heavens that must be paid back with creation. The Creator did not give you a high-functioning brain or a resilient spirit just so you could sit on a beach, consume fast food, and collect cheap dopamine hits. Consumption is just the maintenance fuel. Your true function in this matrix is to create, build, and leave the table cleaner than you found it. When you use your gifts purely for selfish consumption, your baseline receptors begin to rot, leading to deep existential boredom. You fall into depression because you are violating your operational manual. You are a conduit, not a reservoir. The more value you allow to flow through you to the world, the more resources the system will naturally allocate to your station. The freedom of the final page. To know that you are a temporary passenger in a divinely owned house is the highest form of mental liberation. This is the ultimate perspective shift. One day, your breath will stop, your physical hardware will return to the soil, and your ledger will be closed. You are not a permanent resident here, you are on a short-term lease. When you accept this cold biological reality, you stop sweating the small stuff. You stop holding on to toxic grudges, you stop paralyzing yourself over past mistakes, and you stop crying over lost material items. You realize the game is temporary, but the architecture is eternal. You step into your sovereignty, you maximize the leverage God gave you, you drop the exhausting illusion of control, and you execute your script with absolute focus and your eyes wide open. As the ancient proverb goes, the gods help those who help themselves, but nature only bows to the master of his own kingdom. Take your power back.